Welcome back to Off the Record, On the Rocks. Each episode, Michael Toner and Ankarina Lara discuss the nuances of all things crypto, from Bitcoin to Ethereum, altcoins to DeFi, and NFTs to the metaverse. Cutting through the noise and keeping it simple as we pour ourselves into the future.
All right, everybody, welcome back to another Off the Record On the Rocks with my good friend, Mr. Ankarina Lara. How are you doing, sir?
Shall we play a game, Michael?
Wait a second. I need to confirm. Actually, it's maybe good that we do this on video so I can see that it is you, because we are barreling down the future of robots. AI. Coming off the Google keynote this week, making news. These guys are stepping in big time into this. I want to cover all things AI, actually use that as very much the through thread as we then come to Washington, figure out what's going on Capitol Hill, who's thinking about regulation. We've talked a lot about crypto regulation. I really see these two things on a very fast collision course. The same Web3 blockchain technology being pointed directly at and perhaps solving some of the ownership challenges presented by generative AI. We'll cover all of that. And then fast forward to some of the big guys stepping in as we head into the back half of May. What's this going to look like? None bigger than Amazon, the behemoth, also shaking some weight this week. So what's your hot take on the AI coming out of Google this week?
Well, I was reminded of a time when a certain Mr. Ballmer was on stage for a Microsoft show, and he was clapping and running around the stage screaming, "Developers, developers, developers, developers." Now, he didn't have it sprinkled throughout his whole speech. He legitimately just went out there and screamed the word developers over and over again for minutes while everyone cheered and clapped, and it was a real frenzy. So, when we talked about that Google a keynote, I guess you'd call it, that has recently been spliced into a meme with Sundar screaming AI, 80, 90 times, generative AI. I feel like if the world isn't finally awake to the idea that every single company in technology, and even those that aren't, are going to be, like you said, probably saying AI before they say blockchain now. Because crypto, blockchain, Web3, all those words hit the wall, kind of stuck, right? And then fell. But AI, that's the flag that everyone's planting, and everyone's saying that theirs is
Right.
better. Theirs is better, which is, and they're obfuscated. They're opposite of cryptocurrency, opposite of Web3, opposite of blockchain, right? That's transparent and public. Right click, copy, paste. But AI, hey, no. This is proprietary. That's why they love screaming about it. It's proprietary. That's what I took away from this week.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. We've seen the initial influx of ChatGPT. I mean, I go back to my Christmas story when I was writing these letters where I was just playing with the tool and watching where it's evolved, even just over the first 5 months of its inception. Now you've got Google Bard stepping in. I have not played with it as of today, but I'm going to. You mentioned the UI UX looks like a straight ripoff. I said, why are these guys even playing around with a UI UX when they've got Google Docs, they've got Google Sheets, they've got Google Slides? This to me is really where, maybe even to your point about why the AI narrative is kind of breaking through above the Web3, above the crypto narrative, is because now you don't have to talk about the who owns the thing. If I'm doing it inside of my Google Doc or my email, and even if I'm prompting my Gmail to say, write that follow-up email to my last meeting, the user of that absolutely feels like they own that email. Today we have, the little auto replies that pop up on a text message, or the generative replies that give you a quick one click on Microsoft LinkedIn. It's one of the best examples of, like, you get a LinkedIn message and there's prompts of like, yes, I am, no, not interested, thanks for the follow-up. Think about that. I mean, it's reading the conversation, it's anticipating what your response is going to be, but you didn't create that when you click that button and you publish, or did you? And now that's where I see that clear line intersection into the need for that to be an on-chain activity, the need to be able to prove that I at least generated the response, even if I clicked a button, even if I prompted it using a Midjourney, the need to know that provenance of the creator, of who created it, and were they human. Back to your point at the top of the show, AI, I'm going to need to know and be able to prove and verify in real time who created or who generated this thing.
Yeah, and on top of that, just the juxtaposition of whatever that, I want to say 10, 15, 20 years, pick the era. But that was a time when someone got on stage and clapped and cheered and chanted, they were talking about humans. Like, we need more human developers in chairs at Microsoft to code, is sort of what all the words were, but all you heard was developers, developers, developers. Well, now you hear AI, and I'm wondering a little bit like, well, I mean, I think he means we need more humans in chairs to write more code for AI, or does he? Does he mean we need less humans and maybe more and better AI? Is this did he just tip his hand a little bit to say maybe this is where Google changes its course of, they've been basically on a path of hiring and overpaying every engineer on the planet just to do the brain drain of kind of the entire internet. So now are we seeing that the opposite of that, which is, hey, we don't need all that human cost and resource. We
Well,
learned in pandemic. We kind of don't. We have AI. So is that where we're seeing the shift? Because that's interesting to me that Google would be taking that kind of a very direct lead. And like you said, the provenance. Hey, AI doesn't work without the human prompting it, right? So until there is a non-prompt needed AI that is proactive, or I don't know what the words will be, then I think we can always say that whatever you receive, while it might be partially synthetic from me, it definitely comes from me. But like you say, through some midpoint before it hits you.
yeah, I absolutely think that is where I'm seeing this AI arms race come to light, and I'll point directly to the news this week coming out of uh, Fortune magazine. This was an article from Ben Weiss covering Deloitte, Goldman Sachs, Microsoft among institutional players partnering on new blockchain networks. So these three, finance and tech firms coming together to create a blockchain system, the Canton network they're calling it, that talk about the brain dump and the brain suck. Think about the financial data, that Goldman has, the data mining that Deloitte has on credit history and shopping history and credit card payments, and then layer in Microsoft AI, and what they've got with OpenAI and ChatGPT and the large language model that they bring to bear to now point at these data sets from Deloitte and Goldman. Yeah, so I'm just taking the other side of this of you're seeing the institutional brands and companies, legacy finance providers. We've covered this from the Web3 crypto angle of how they're stepping in, and just watch the same alignments. I can almost guarantee you draw concentric circles around those who have stated their partners, on one side of the finance coin are basically going to use those same partners on now this AI and generative AI and large language models with those same partners. You're almost seeing these new fiefdoms, which
Yeah,
is
yeah, it's almost
fascinating.
like we're seeing two concentric circles that are starting to cross over like a Venn diagram. Because up until they started screaming AI on stage, everyone is moving to the blockchain. Like we sort of know, even if you're not talking about it,
Right.
you are, right? I mean, Venmo doesn't announce this week that, or sorry, PayPal, which is all the same, but PayPal announces this week that it just, just out of kind of in a random bit of data information, announces to all of us that the users on PayPal have $1 billion worth of Bitcoin and Ethereum in their PayPal wallets. And you're like, wow,
What?
like that, I wouldn't have expected that much. But so if all of these guys are just right on the bleeding edge of what really blockchain technology should be and do, but it's always the way we've talked about it, they've always been on that bleeding edge of cryptocurrencies and transactions and value, and we're kind of tracking it from that angle. But I like this concentric circle because now it's like, okay, well, they all know if we're going to steer 100% in our blockchain rhetoric into currency and value, well, we're going to make a whole bunch of people on Capitol Hill agitated, right? We're going to have the Gary Genslers. We're going to have that woman, Hester Pierce, who works for Gary Gensler but disagrees with him constantly. I want to say that she calls herself the crypto mommy, just like she gave herself her own name. It's really bad stuff. But they all don't like it, right? When you start talking blockchain and the next thing you say is Ethereum or crypto or wallet. I mean, we certainly know that Elizabeth Warren doesn't like it when you talk about your wallet. So they just don't talk about that. Now they're like, no, blockchain data technology is this first circle on the left, and this new circle on the right is called AI, and we're going to roll them over each other and see, well, like you said, Deloitte kind of right there, Microsoft kind of right there. I mean, we know the Goldman Sachs announcement, that third name you just mentioned, we already know that Apple already kind of hinted that they have a deep partnership with Goldman Sachs heading into their June event. So now we're seeing the technology companies and the financial guys overlaying one another the same way the AI and the blockchain do. And gosh, where those intersections are, those are the ones that are going to define how AI is used, because in this example that we just gave, the regulators can't say anything because there aren't any nefarious financial transactions going on. It's just AI
Just data.
helping you do stuff with your data,
Yeah.
right?
I'll make two comments and then I'm going to zoom back in time for a second. But we've talked about here on the show software eating the world. I've talked about gaming and Web3 and gaming eating the Web3 world. The other one here is finance. And I've heard the saying before that, every business ultimately becomes a bank, but where that actually goes to the next step of every business becoming a data company. And if you don't have AI layered on top of it, then you can't make sense of your own data. Therefore, you're not in business. That's a giant topic and maybe not a coherent thought quite yet. But what I'm going to then do is zoom way, way out. I mean, I can go back to a similar conversation we had 18 months ago when we were trying to make giant year-long predictions, and zooming out in parts of those discussions, we talked about these kind of fiefdoms that needed to be created. We were talking about them in crypto terms. We were talking about them in Web3 and loyalty points of all of a sudden you might have this collection of I need an airline, I need a bank, I need a tech partner, I need a home goods partner, right? Because that's the interoperability that we were talking about in terms of crypto and financial transactions in order to have Web3 power their loyalty programs. Fast forward, I mean, everything we've seen, the collapse that was needed to say we cleaned up the bad guys, the clear conversation that's been happening on Capitol Hill to say we're going to regulate these things. We still need to get to Coinbase and what's happening there here in DC, but bring it all the way back around to that same logic now being applied to I've got a tech partner, I've got a banking partner, I've got a data partner. You see now these fiefdoms being set up around AI, and I'm blown away because I do think that's then going to be the catalyst that brings this whole thing together. This is how we get to the third generation of the internet, whatever that's going to look like. This is how we get there.
Yeah, I mean, and that's something that's becoming a lot clearer in some of the comments we had over the course of the week. Before today's recording, and recording a day early today. Today is Thursday, May 11th. We normally record on Friday. We can't record tomorrow. I have to believe we're going to see a whole bunch of more stuff drop by tomorrow
I
because
think you're right.
it never fails. After Friday, we record, and then just that afternoon, someone slides in some insane update. But what you're saying, it makes a ton of sense because if Web3, if the new generation of the internet, the new iteration, the third gen, is going to take off, there I think we all, or at least the world, the crypto world, the internet world, the Web3 world, believed FTX, Voyager, Celsius, cryptocurrencies. This was the path to the new internet, which is there's going to be value in transaction. You're going to be able to hold your own. It was all very predicated on like all the stuff we just talked about, which of course will always run up against the government and regulation and won't ever allow it to pass, and almost confuses and muddies why it is we're talking about blockchain. Because most normal people don't think Bitcoin, oh, Dogecoin, and then think, well, what amazing technology, what amazing blockchain technology lives underneath this? What is the data set that's happening? What kind of computations are happening? Are there any algorithms that are happening? All these things are sort of the second part of the conversation, and no one wants to talk about that because everyone's just worried about making money right now and who's making it. I want my piece, and everyone's so focused on classic American capitalism and greed that we forget what's really cool underneath it all. And it took AI, it took the robots, the bots, that revelation, which is you have your own data blob and you have your own data model. You have two choices. You can go out and hire 20 engineers and start getting big data guys in here making sense of stuff, or you can start to train a highly, focused a bot to basically go through and advise you on how to manage your data. And I think that now we're seeing that's obviously, like you said, and you call it an arms race. I mean, it feels like that, right?
Well,
It feels like a nuclear arms race.
and then talk about the brands who are on the bleeding edge of that arms race. We just gave you a bunch that are clearly stepping in. Now here's Spotify announcing they've removed thousands of AI generated songs. So this tells me a couple of things. They're already one step ahead of the game. They already are, or at least are trying to stay one step ahead of the game to be able to flag, identify, programmatically surface these AI generated songs and pull them out of the catalog. They want to then own the ecosystem, right? If I, as a creator, should be able to go in and create 10,000 songs AI generated, but they want to know who created them, who owns them, how are they being distributed, how are the royalties being paid? It comes down to that ownership. So that's another good example of a brand diving straight into AI in the removal of those AI songs. But you take the very next step and it's like, why? Why are they removing them? Well, it has to do with the money. You can't track the royalties.
No, and if you're gonna, if we talked about this, I think this is now almost going back a year and change when we're talking about some NFTs, and a buddy of mine launched some Warp NFTs, which had AI generated music as part of the
That's
unique
right.
NFT, right? A unique image of a character with its various, design elements. It's wearing special glasses and a special jacket or whatever, but it has a special track that's unique to it playing in the background when you look at it effectively. So I think about that in the context of Spotify, where I worked, at MP3.com in my old many lives ago. I know the way that the music data system works. It's very, very old and archaic. I'm sure it's improved over time. But what it does is it's very, very easy to know what is the specific thumbprint, fingerprint of a song to make it authentic. And it has a way of calculating that. And so to discover synthetic tracks or AI generated tracks maybe isn't even that difficult for Spotify. The fact that they just came out with thousands of them, but it does say they're going to be playing this game of whack-a-mole, chase around, around the sofa of can we find, identify, and eliminate these songs which are AI generated fast enough so that we can kind of create a model in the background where maybe you as the end user, me as the end user, we can make a Rift version. Maybe we want to have our voice sing our favorite Beyonce song, and I want to send that to my sister as a fun birthday present or whatever it is. And maybe then there is a way to subscribe to be that kind of a, AI remixer, a human remixer using AI, but that in turn will pay some amount of royalties to those artists because ultimately they know where the derivative work is coming from, right? Like the famous example, we know that Drake and Future's voices were cloned and someone made a really fun track. Okay, well, what if that person who made that track is a $20 a month subscriber and Drake and Future get royalties off that track? Like, it doesn't seem like it would be that difficult given the power of the AI. It's just kind of catching up to create that foundational system in order to reward people for their original works.
This is exactly that hypothesis that I think I'm still, working through, honestly, is these intersections. So what you just described of this co-creation that all of a sudden brands and a technology platform like Spotify that has both sides of the marketplace, they're going to find themselves in a really amazing position to facilitate that kind of co-creation. And I think that creates this new immersive economy. And what I mean by that is
Hmm.
the person whose music it actually is, the person who's creating the new music, and then the person who's also listening to said mashup can all be rewarded and compensated either for their fandom as a loyalty or with their financial support as a cash being paid for the distribution or people buying the derivatives. So now all of a sudden that
or sharing and the influence of that person
right,
sharing
and
it.
That's why I'm using the word economy as I describe that, is because I do think these are new economies, new business models that are going to come out of that generative AI and who owns it and how it gets paid for, distributed, and the loyalty for the fans who support those creators. And that brings us all the way back around to the NFT summer of what the conversation was about, and generative art and artists getting paid for what they create. Well, I think the AI now taking the lead, AI taking the lead, and I just hope we're connecting those dots back for these two things are on a collision course faster than I can ever remember.
Yeah, and it's going to require some type of careful stewardship. And that's where each of these companies that are coming out with their version of AI are fighting effectively for that pole position to decide everything from the product roadmap of of OpenAI as a company or just any other AI companies, to try to take the first mover, first words at keynotes, trying to again grab that narrative, because we've seen, to use the NFT summer as an example, we've seen the messaging and the marketing that this is going to be the summer when artists who are poorly represented are finally going to have their day, and the person who creates the most beautiful little JPEG and then creates this generative group of them, of 10,000 of them, is going to have a chance to
we all going to make
and
it
have a career. And of course, as we played it out and look backwards, we all realize, well, it was a nice type of benevolent message. However, in reality, only people who were already famous because of influence were the only people who could tell you about an NFT that mattered, were the only people that could really push their art to make money for their effort. Or you're just a stone cold criminal and you create fake NFT projects, lure people into thinking this is some benevolent thing, and then rug pull them. So clearly, however that was going to go, went bad. So now we're like, okay, well, too many humans involved maybe. Let's get some AI in here to kind of start setting the new rules, and let's pour untold amounts of money to try to figure that out. So we've logged, to bring it back to these big companies, all the investments over the last 18 months, talking about 250 million here, a billion here, everyone dropping their money in, everyone from their MetaMasks to Microsoft to whatever. And now, as we come into this spring summer, it's the AI spring summer, and now we're seeing, at least not the fruits maybe, because we're still just seeing like clever little chat windows that talk back to us. We haven't really seen anything. We hear stories about how great it's going to be, but really we only see that little chat back and forth. But it's the beginnings of billions and billions of dollars of investment. And now all these guys are going to come out and are going to talk and are going to want to define the narrative on their terms. And that's what we're already seeing with, Google going first. Microsoft is going to be a fast follow, and then we know Apple's at the end or the beginning of June. We're going to have all three hit in about a 4-week period.
I think that's right. It puts, again, that Apple keynote right in such a interesting spot. But I want to bring us back to Washington. So we just set a whole bunch of framework around AI and brands and what it means for Web3 and what it means for crypto. And this week, I think after we recorded last week, you had the guys at JP Morgan putting out this white paper, this brief with the headline, El Salvador, getting some credit. And you've now got their credit rating being upgraded from triple C to triple C from double C, or whatever the next lowest tier is. They got some credit, quote unquote. Isn't that interesting that you kind of had to check that box of the fallout, what the hell are these guys in El Salvador doing? And now JP Morgan, well, they're getting some credit. They're elevating that credit score. That, to me, signals the need for this regulation on Capitol Hill, the softening of the fiat guys on crypto, them getting ready to open the floodgates because they're going to have to. in order to keep track of all these generative AI and who owns them. I just think that this is an interesting one coming out of JP Morgan. What's your take on this?
Well, yeah. So I'm even going a couple layers deeper on this one, and I don't want to. I know we always kind of, we give the little ding star to our audience when we're sort of treading on some conspiracy theory stuff. But
we need a new sound option.
We need a new sound option for that. It has to be like the sound of like someone being like mugged in a movie, like whoa. But the conspiracy theory for this is, look, El Salvador was considered a joke. Everybody from traditional banking said, "What are you doing? 100% Bitcoin? Oh, you people are idiots." I mean, Jamie Dimon himself 3-4 years ago was basically crypto's a bunch of trash, Bitcoin's nothing, like we're not going to do anything. Now, just because everyone can reinvent themselves in this new world, JP Morgan and Jamie Dimon are not only like all in on crypto and all in on Bitcoin, running commercials in last year's Super Bowl, trying to quote make sense of the buzzwords, but also are saving regional banks. Let's not forget the top story from last week. JP Morgan straight up coming in and saving First Republic and regional banks everywhere. Why? Oh, because he's such a good person? No, it's good for business. He wants to be everywhere you are with your wallet because he knows JP Morgan wasn't the one chosen to work with Apple. That was Goldman Sachs. You have to start to align yourselves with other businesses. So him coming in, or them, I should say, coming in and saying, God, El Salvador, your credit rating's going up. We're going to have, you're pretty soon El Salvadorian bonds are going to be investment grade, is sort of what the, President Bukele says is like his next big target and all these things. Well, I look at it like, all right, if the United States has been totally capable of creating a bank for the world, not just one, but two, because they have the World Bank and they have the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, which effectively are U.S. apparatus to loan money to foreign governments for the purposes of, infrastructure building and whatever. But we all know it also helps them become sympathetic to United States needs and issues because they owe us money, right? Well, there isn't really an international Federal Reserve, in the sense that while you can get loans from the U.S. from a bank called the World Bank and the IMF, there isn't the same structure like we have with the Federal Reserve and FedNow. So I'm thinking like, well, what if Coinbase wants to become that Federal Reserve for these countries? If they're dealing 100% in crypto, could they be kind of that backstop?
Global marketplace.
Then they don't need to go and get these hard fiat loans. And if that's happening on the Coinbase side, they're already talking about going overseas. They already opened their operations outside of the U.S. They already now have the ability, Coinbase, to deal with foreign governments without asking any permission from the U.S. regulators. Well, so JP Morgan's in there talking about stuff. I mean, we know they're going into crypto. Is there an opportunity now for private sector companies in the United States to effectively disintermediate the need for foreign governments to work with government federal approved money lending borrowing systems? That's the interesting thing to me right now. And if you layer AI into that, and let's say I'm Batman and I'm in my little cave and I hit my button and I say, computer, which country in the world could best use this and this and this and this in their blah, blah, blah banking, whatever. Well, AI probably tell you these three, and Coinbase and JP Morgan are already going to go down and talk to them next week because they already know they're the ones who need the help the most. And they're probably not on the top 10 list for the World Bank and the IMF. There's like that boutique industry to service 180, 190 countries in the world who today aren't being serviced by the World Bank and the IMF. That, to me, taking that conspiracy hat off right now, but I feel like that's where the tethers are going to go internationally, is to other governments.
It's really, really interesting. So sticking on Coinbase and sticking here in DC, this was this week, as of May 9th, this former Coinbase product manager was sentenced to 2 years in prison on the charges of insider trading. And we talked about this, like we talked about it when it was happening. So now you're getting an enforcement action, against a specific employee, but no doubt, a huge warning to Coinbase of, and ideally not ideally, but logically one they saw coming. They knew it was coming. They're talking to these guys. They're in the meetings with Gensler and talking to the Fed and talking to the DOJ and talking to the SEC and understanding how they're going to operate, simultaneously calling out loud very publicly. And actually, I think it was also from this week, they got some support in that public call from, it was from A16, and I forget who else kind of came with them, the Blockchain Association, pushing back on the SEC's proposed custody rules. That was this week, May 9th. So there you go. You've got an enforcement action. Somebody's going to jail for insider trading, plain and simple. Now Coinbase, hopefully this is also a sign of like they've cleaned up all the mess, right? That had to get cleaned up in order for them to be anywhere close to what you were just talking about. In order for them to be able to go and do all those things and still operate in the US, they're absolutely playing this phenomenally well from my perspective.
Yeah,
so far.
We know that the playbook exists. There are many chapters, and they're just turning a page, and then they're just calling the next shot, right? This is not something that's happening by accident. It's something that they've planned out very, very well. Planned out even back years ago, where they were scrapping, putting in a digital an e-dollar and e-cash, in the stimulus package original proposals. There was already this concept that somehow we were moving everyone in the United States onto a blockchain or cryptocurrency value exchange of some form or another, probably faster than anyone felt comfortable with, and that's probably why they pared it back. But they already have thought about this. And to the point about Coinbase, when we talked about this 18 months ago, 2 years ago, when we knew the valuation of Coinbase was way, way over what it should be, right? It was like there was some like multiple hundreds of billions, I want to say. Like the original stock was at like $700, $600 a share. It was this whole thing. And we all said, gosh, how is it that valuable? It doesn't make any sense. It's going to drop soon after it IPOs the same way that every company does, right? Every company has an IPO, everyone from Meta and Facebook all the way along down, where, yeah, all the OG, C-suite, early birds, the whole point is when you go IPO and ring the bell at the stock exchange, that you were there first, and then you're going to be able to sell a whole bunch of your shares at your preferred option price with an automatic 20% lift and probably even more, and you're going to be a millionaire. And that's what you do, right? Like you worked really hard for 10 years, and you go public, and you're going to get paid, right? That's what that we all know as the way the game is played. So it should be no surprise, but it is kind of a surprise, because if every other stock does this, and we all know that that's kind of insider trading, how did they go get like 2 emails from some poor guy who was just trying to get rich? He's just like, hey, I'm going to dump all my shares after we ring the bell and get rich. And they're like, that's awesome. And he got rich, and everyone did. I mean, Brian Armstrong, I just learned recently, has the most expensive house in the United States. Do you hear this?
No.
I want to say that his home transaction, I guess, this went under the radar for me, but I guess he bought a house somewhere, and it's like it's a single house, like a residential purchase that I want to say is north of $100 million, which I guess outpaced some Russian oligarch's purchase from some years ago. Yeah. So all these guys get rich. Like, hey, yeah, go like this, right? Ring the bell. You guys were there first. You sell some shares, you get rich. But this guy from Coinbase is like, no. You sold some shares, you're going to jail for 2 years. Like, how did they get so on the wrong side of Gary Gensler and the SEC that they can't even go do the thing that everyone else does? Like when I was running a startup, our goal was go public, then sell shares, then get rich, then retire. That's what everybody thinks. It doesn't happen to everybody. And apparently when it happens to you in crypto, friend, you're going to be in jail for 2 years thinking about what you did, even though it's no different than anybody else. So I just feel like they're just pushing these guys around. Yeah, Coinbase has no spine. They don't stand up to anybody. They just get folded over by Gary Gensler and the SEC week in and week out. I don't know what they're doing, what their problem is, but Armstrong is not a strong leader, clearly. I mean,
the three
something's up.
This is not the first case from Coinbase, but it looks like there's 3 people. There was a ring of 3, and they made a profit of $1.5 million from insider trading and had traded 25 digital currencies prior to its listing. So another part of this was knowing when a coin was coming on, like when an ICO or a new coin was going to be listed on the exchange and buying it right at the point when it's going to be listed, which is also an interesting segue to a here and now trend also involving Coinbase. But this Pepe, we talked about Pepe. We did not talk about it in the context of Coinbase, but somewhere between when I told you I bought a bag for the culture and today it got listed, I guess, on one of the big exchanges. I don't think Coinbase actually ended up listing it, because in this blast marketing email they sent out, they basically called it a meme coin, described the rug pull mechanics of how these meme coins get set up and the no liquidity on the back end, and basically called it a alt-right, conspiracy signal, which I had never heard of, just for full transparency. So that also, I read it and was like, holy crap, what are they doing? And I think they've now retracted it. They've apologized. But it's fascinating. They now find themselves kind of pissing off the people who are like, wait a second, I should be able to, my money, if I want to buy a meme coin and I want it to go to zero and it's going to go to zero, that's on me, Coinbase. What are you giving me financial advice, right? Are you allowed to do that? Are you licensed to do that?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not even sure that they know the answer to that question based on their current standing with the SEC. But I think that just for the benefit of our listeners, meme coin is what used to be called an altcoin, but basically a copy and pasted cryptocurrency often associated with a trending meme or joke on the internet or on Twitter, that becomes a currency you can buy. It usually has a value. When you bought the Pepe, was it 0.0001 cents for one? Or,
yes, exactly. There was I got like a trillion for like 50 bucks.
Trillions of them. Yeah, okay, so you got 50 bucks. And then of course, based on all the fun in like the fun internet and Twitter battles, the meme coin sort of rises and falls in price based on how much it's talked about. And then all you really hope for is someone like an Elon Musk to tweet about it. And then next thing you know, you're quote rich. It's going to the moon. But of course, we all know that when the value goes up on a meme coin, which is based on really nothing but people putting money in, that as soon as someone starts pulling money out or tries to, well, then the price plummets. So it's very difficult to actually.
It sounds exactly like the IPO description you just gave.
Yes. It's exact, but like, God forbid you do that in an ICO, in initial coin offering. Like, that's what everyone tried to do, is mimic this Wall Street behavior, except that you can't. You're not allowed to. Now, but the story that's hiding under the meme coin story that you just gave with Pepe, and like now there's all this FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt around like it's an alt-right wing, like hate symbol. Yeah. And like you said, there was this whole commotion over people having to retract statements and like ugly criticisms and all these things. But then AI, let's not forget, AI then came in under that smoky haze of, is it a hate symbol? Is it a rug pull? Is it whatever? And AI is like, oh, by the way, we just created a derivative meme coin off of the Pepe meme coin called Turbo. And we're now going to sell that. Like, AI is going to start to create the meme coins, because AI actually has a better understanding and read of those meme data sets, right? It's not just looking at top 10 trending Twitter topics. Right. It's actually going deep into the data and saying, oh no, here's a better meme coin to draw more money in. So, because the robots know better which memes are going to pop, right? Because they are the ones who pop the memes.
And that just made me think of something we have not talked about, our boy Mr. Elon Musk here today. But when I think memes, I think Twitter. And when I think data set to mine data to find said memes, I think Twitter. I got my first email this week from Company X, renewing I have the Pro, the blue checkmark verification. And now it came from X Corporation, was that the actual charge, which I found like, okay, really interesting here. But also I saw a note about rolling out true encrypted DMs, and think about that in the context of everything we just described. You'd be able to transact via the DM. I could send in @Carino and send you a couple of Pepe tokens if I wanted to. We talked about this integration a couple of episodes ago of the cash tag making a comeback. Well, here you go. Company X infrastructure now laid, put the old company to bed, new company gets stood up, roll out encrypted DMs. Well, if they're encrypted and it's true peer-to-peer with my DM, then why couldn't I send money via that? And now to use the data to understand what's the next one that's going to pop. Don't be surprised if Pepe or Dogecoin or both of them or all of the above make an entrance onto Twitter. And my guess is, if I were Elon Musk, I'd wait till after Apple's announcement. and try to get the last word in of how are you going to go down this hallway of the metaverse. When I'm scrolling,
Yeah.
I come back to something you've talked about. It's a very strong visual for me. Where am I going to go when I'm ready to scroll the metaverse and go shopping with my goggles? Probably going to go to my X app.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you might be right on that. I would also say because Elon is such a troll by deep down that he might just try to make the announcement on the same day as Apple's full week in Cupertino and just like try to do a digital onslaught of messaging around X Corp during that exact same window of time. Because, like you said, the cash tags are going to come back. Now, probably most people who had sent at some point in their life a questionable direct message on Twitter are probably scratching their head thinking, wait, now they're encrypted? Are you telling me that up until now, for the last decade, I've been sending unencrypted DMs to all these people? Well, the answer is yeah. And so as soon as you come out and say, hey, it's encrypted, you just pave the way, like you said, to allow transactions, and Elon even said, you're going to be able to send Bitcoin to someone else. I think he might have said in a tweet, which I think he really meant, in a encrypted direct message on my new X Corp platform, which you formerly knew as Twitter. And again, the narrative will continue to be, it's a tug of war, and I'm not sure who's on what side. We know Apple's on its own side, but Apple might actually have three different ropes. He's pulling one against Elon, pulling another one against Microsoft, pulling everyone against Google. I mean, they're not pulling anything against Facebook. I feel like Facebook is just getting spun out, bamboozled here. They're not even a part of the conversation.
I know we're running long here too, but I'm going to throw one more in and we can wrap it up. But don't forget Amazon. When you go right down that all of those that you just talked about, don't forget about Amazon. And they came out with a very interesting headline this week, today, I believe, about magic links, which is very much an account abstraction, basically allowing the user to get a magic link to a wallet access, being able to verify their identity without having to maintain their seed phrase. But actually, I'm guessing maybe you had more context of it, whether it was biometrics or how they were going to use it. But they are coming out with this concept of abstracting the Web3 wallet. That, to me, don't rule Amazon out. We know they're coming with at least what they were calling an NFT marketplace this summer. Let's see if that holds up. But I do know that they're trying to solve for that account abstraction with the wallet, and if you can own your own seed phrase, essentially using your identity.
Yeah, I mean that to me is this is going to be the game changer, and there are going to be big companies that have a ham-handed approach to it, and others that are going to do it quite elegant. I already say that to set up the comparison to Amazon and to Apple, because we already know that Apple's solution will be elegant, and we probably can guess that any other solution from Amazon, Microsoft, or anyone else is going to be a little bit clunky. And I say that because, look, if you want to have broad adoption of cryptocurrency transactions, and let's just leave out all the insanity of Pepe and Doge and Ethereum based craziness. Let's just say Bitcoin. If you really want as a culture us to start to adopt Bitcoin and use it well, if FedNow wants the FedNow coin to be adopted, all these things are going to be adopted today, it is intimidating and complicated. Because I've tried to explain to people, and I've walked people through who've asked me specifically, can you help me set up my cold storage wallet? Can you help me move my crypto off the internet, et cetera, et cetera? And you start talking about cold storage wallets and ordering these sort of fancied up thumb drives. You start talking about seed phrases and their lists of 16 to 22 natural language words in an order, and keep it on a card written down, but not over there, and not say, blah, blah, blah. It gets people very anxious. So as soon as you're Amazon and say, hey, all that seed phrase stuff, all this and that, there's just going to be a single magic link. They didn't really go too far into how it's all going to work.
Sounds like magic.
This thing called the magic link is just going to get you access. It's going to bypass the need to remember these phrases and all these things. Well, look, we're coming towards the beginning of June. We're getting there closer and closer each week. And we all know that everyone at Apple already has every pixel of your face stored. And they're going to disintermediate the seed phrase. They're going to disintermediate all that wallet stuff using just your face awake and blinking, not unconscious and under duress, is going to open your access to your wallet. And that's how they're going to end up pretty much dominating this whole, I think, conversation as we roll into the summer.
Your face, not your robot face. That's for sure. I will leave it there, sir. We'll do it again next time.
Great talking to you, Michael.
That's all the time we have for Off the Record, On the Rocks. Join us next week for news and all things crypto. Bring up the house lights. It's last call.